Hello, good morning. It is the 19th of March, Saturday, and I have read from chapter 73 to chapter 89 now. So within those chapters, a lot has changed. I believe some of this is actually covered in the movie, which is called After We Collided. So this is the book by Todd. It's the second in the After series. And they've also made the movie, which is a film adaptation of the book. Sorry, I'm just yawning away here. I'm so sorry about that. So yes, I've got to chapter 89, and a lot has kind of changed between Hardin and Tess. They're no longer together at this moment in time in the book. They've actually not been together for 9 to 11 days now, which isn't strange because they have actually broke up before, and it was for like 2 weeks after she found out about the bet. But what's interesting is in this book they actually explain how each of them deals with accepting in a way that neither of them are going to be in each other's lives. So she moves in with Hardin's dad and Karen and Landon, who's currently in New York visiting his girlfriend who's studying ballet. And Hardin actually, when he found out Tess probably didn't want to speak to him anymore, he actually flew to London to be with his mother for a whole week. And whilst he was in London, he bumps into a lady called Natalie, who is now pregnant. She's engaged. And the significant thing about Natalie is that when he was younger, he actually did something to this girl that was basically unforgivable. He made a sex tape of her and him and showed his friends. And he thought he had basically ruined her life. And he tells Tess about this. He actually writes Tess a letter explaining who he used to be and how he used to behave. And that letter, he actually writes it to her before Christmas. And it's just after they've kind of had a fight, and he still doesn't know whether or not she will forgive him or be with him again. Sorry. After he's obviously done what he did to her. And her mum knows, and his mum know now, that he hasn't really changed. And his mum's quite sad for him that he hasn't really changed from being a teenager into an adult. He's still kind of doing the same things to women, demeaning women. So he writes Tessa a letter. I'll explain that in more detail in another video. And so he goes to see his mum, and his mum basically says to him, Tessa loves you. I know she loves you. You've just got to talk to her. You've got to kind of man up in a way. I don't really like that saying. But you've got to admit your mistakes. Understand that what's happened has happened. Try and keep the past in the past and move on. Do not allow what happened to me, which was the assault, to consume you. Because at the moment he is actually having nightmares. Instead of his mum being attacked, it's now Tessa. So the image of his mum has actually been replaced by Tessa. So he's sort of seen Natalie and she's happy. She, I suppose in a way, she's accepted what happened to her. She had to forgive him. But it wasn't just him that obviously ruined her life. It was the people within her life already that ruined it, because instead of standing by her and supporting her after this sort of heinous crime happened, they shunned her. They threw her to the curb and basically threw her from society. Even her church excommunicated her. I mean, come on. Talk about the house of God. And, you know, Mary Magdalene, for crying out loud, even she was loved by Jesus. And she was supposed to have been a fallen woman. And so she ends up going to another church where she meets this guy called Elijah. They've been together for 2 years, they're getting married, they're having a baby. Harden is kind of feeling a bit guilty because everyone around him is getting married. Even Vance has just proposed to Kim at their so-called leave-in party because he's moving to Seattle to open up his new firm there. So there's now 2 Vance publishing houses, one in Washington and now one in Seattle. And Kim has accepted. She is so happy that Vance, although he misses his wife Rose, that he's found another person in his life that he can now love. He'll never forget his wife. He's the mother of his child. But he's been able to find happiness again. And that's really hard for people to do. It doesn't happen for everybody. So, at the moment, Tessa's at the party with Trevor and everybody else she works with, her colleagues, Harden's family, and he turns up. And the only person really that wants to talk to him is Smith, who's Vance's son, because he finds, as an adult, he's quite an interesting adult to be around, because he's different. Sort of stands out from the crowd. So that's where I've kind of got to at the moment. And again, Tessa's kind of spoken to Zeb a lot as well. And she asked him, if you'd have won the bet, how would things have differentiated between the way Harden's treated me? And to be honest, Zeb is actually a bit of a more of a smooth, cool operator. The way he's spoken to her, it's like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. And he's basically said things would have been different. I would have loved you. I would have done anything to make sure that you were forever mine and that you never felt the way that Harden makes you feel. So, you know, it's one of them. So she has kissed him in the car and she stayed at his apartment. But apart from that, she hasn't really spent much time with anyone else. And I think as well, they're kind of their little clique, their little group. They've kind of got to that point now where they've been at college for a while. So they are kind of drifting apart because they're transitioning into adulthood. And unfortunately, when you do that, you do kind of wake up at some point and think, what am I doing? Why am I drinking all the time? Why am I smoking? You know, I want to move on with my life. There's got to be more than just frat parties. So it's good that you're kind of seeing that transition between the characters and that you're learning more about them as they grow. But at the same time, the relationship I feel that Tessa is in with Harden isn't a positive one, and it doesn't give a positive outlook in society or to tell people who read this book that it's not normal to be in those kind of relationships and to continue to be in them. Something has to give. If you choose to forgive somebody, fine, but they need to go to like AA meetings or something. But what you don't want to be is in a toxic relationship where you could be potentially subjected to mental, physical, or even emotional abuse. So, thank you very much, and I will continue. And we will see how much of the book I can read before Sunday.